Welcome to the Beauty Way. It is the two of us today, and we're excited because we haven't done one of these for a while, just the two of
No.
us.
Mm.
And we were just chatting beforehand because we really wanted to, this season, after our first episode with Pia, she's so inspiring, and her, what she knows, her big brain, and the way that she's able to articulate, she's so inspiring with her passion. And so we really wanted to weave that through this series of to talk about passion and to talk with passionate humans and to really feel the heart of what lights people up. And so that's where we wanted to start today's conversation
Mm.
around passion.
Yeah, amazing. It's so exciting to be here just with the two of us again.
It is. And so for me, what I've journeyed with over the years is firstly, um, not really knowing what I felt passionate about. So
Mm.
for like people used to ask me, why did you join the army? And I'd be like, well, I thought it would be adventurous and I didn't really know what else I was going to do. And got a free degree. And so I did it. And, and so I didn't really understand. It wasn't something that was taught to me
Mm.
when we're at school about follow your passion. And
Mm.
so that's really why what we wanted to explore is like, what does it actually mean to follow your passion? Because it wasn't until I was probably in my 40s where I realized that, oh, I actually had been following my passion, but it wasn't what I thought it should look like. What about you?
Yeah, well, like when I tune into passion, one of the things that I feel like is for me very similar in the sense that I feel like the times that I've been most passionate, like in a really outward kind of way, has been when I am really for something. And over the years, I actually feel like I've gotten um, a bit more kind of neutral in it. Like my
What do you mean by
passion,
neutral?
well, my passion is still there about the things that I love and about my beliefs and about like how I see the world and how it can like really weave us. And yet I feel no need to have someone else understand or agree.
Yeah.
And so there's this kind of neutralization almost of my passion sometimes where I can feel it, it's there, but it's not kind of pushing out where it's against something else or like for something. It's not like that for and against kind of energy.
Yeah.
Because I remember, like, I reflect on times when I was really, really passionate about natural health. And these days, I still feel that passion in my body about the things that are good for me, but there's less need for other people to change or to have some kind of experience that I think should sort of happen.
Yeah.
And I feel like the when my passion really comes out these days is, I guess, more when it's invited rather than I feel like it used to be a little bit more maybe uninvited sometimes.
And so it's not actually the passion that's coming out, it's the outward expression of the passion. For me, like I used to judge myself that I wasn't outwardly expressing my passion enough. And um I would think, oh, I sound like I'm boring or it's uninspiring or I haven't got the right energy behind it. I haven't got the right energy and I'm not like exactly what you're saying is I'm not kind of being evangelistic
Mm.
about what I love. I'm just here. And I feel that's such a powerful journey to go on though. And
Mm.
for us as well, like because you and I have really been on this intentional journey over the last 12 months or so of
Mm.
allowing ourselves to follow our heart. And when we were talking about like how do we discover our passion, my belief is that I've connected more and more with my passion as I've tuned into my body and I've let my body guide me in, and not stop trying to control so many of the external realm, and
Mm,
actually let my body guide me and take the step even though I don't know what's going to come next.
yeah, totally. Yeah. And I I sometimes have felt like where I've been led by my body isn't always in alignment with the place where I would be in that real kind of external passionate place.
Mm.
And I'll be like, oh, I kind of didn't really expect to be here, but there is this real internal kind of experience of passion around the places in which I land. And I think that's really interesting to reflect on, because in my life, when I've landed in places that are meant for me, it hasn't been because of my push of my external passion, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But there's this kind of rolling energy inside me that is kind of always leading me in these places. And then when I land somewhere and I feel like it's so right for me, but I wouldn't have necessarily made it happen, or yeah, I almost feel like sometimes the places that I'm um, yeah, I always have to like check myself of, is this passion here because of like it's this natural flow,
Mm.
or is it this place where um, it's almost like a proving, or a um, sometimes that internal experience of not feeling kind of certain either way. And when I'm feeling like that uncertainty either way, I can get really passionate about it, almost to find more centered solidness in myself.
Mm.
I don't even know if that
Yeah,
makes
I
sense,
love
but
it. It's so nuanced, isn't it?
Mm.
Because I was thinking about the aspect of the in having the passion but not outwardly expressing it, and
Yeah,
feeling it in a moment. And to me, the feeling, it feels like it's energizing. Like when I sit with it and I move with it, it's energizing. And it might not always be easy, or but there may still be challenges when I'm following that passion, but it still energizes me and I have this zest or enthusiasm, if you like.
mm,
Whereas if I've got this thing and I think that I should be a certain way about it, and I think that I should outwardly express it a little bit more, and and I start to push, and I love how you use the word prove. Like that's definitely been part of my journey as well, is like learning that I don't have to prove anything, like I get to come back to myself and go, what feels really good for me. But if I go on that path, then I start to feel depleted after a little while. And that to me isn't that really comes through self exploration and self inquiry.
yeah.
So when it comes to that self inquiry, how do we tap in even more to what am I passionate about and how do I move with that?
And it's really interesting because I feel like as you were talking about that, all I could hear was like the passion is our life force energy.
Mm.
It's moving us. And when we follow that, for both of us, I'm referred to human design, we're both generator types. And so we have a similar kind of pulse that kind of activates us to move in different directions. And all the human design types have a different way of that, but I can only describe it in which the way that it moves through my body. But when I feel like I'm being moved in a direction, it feels like life force energy and I don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like the passion is really so intertwined with that. And yeah, I almost feel like the more that I follow that life force that's moving, there's more passion in my experience, like in my reality.
Yeah.
And a really interesting piece for me over the last year or so has been a huge detangling of my own enmeshment wounds. And what I have come to realize through that is how much of my passion was like inherited,
Mm.
and how much of it was like different aspects of it were due to the enmeshment, which is the child part of me trying to be the same or to gain acceptance or love through being passionate about similar things to the people that there was enmeshment experiences with. And I found that to be so fascinating to kind of realize that so many of my passions were informed by
Yeah.
that. And I probably would never have really, I mean, it makes sense at a logical level that your experiences as a younger person will form some of the things that you're really passionate about. You know, like it's so common that someone who has experienced some form of abuse will then be really passionate about supporting people in that experience. You know, there's a formation that happens of our passions, and one of the things that I'm most passionate about is these types of conversations. It's our evolution, it's our ascension, and that was definitely inherited through the experiences that I had in my family, like with my mom, because she was really and is really passionate about evolution and our own kind of consciousness ascension and what that means. And so it's curious because then, you know, my brothers don't have the same passion about that.
Yeah.
And so there's this real, you know, interesting piece for me around I had to really find what the truth was for me. Am I passionate about this because it's inherited, or is it actually like my truth? And for some things, it felt really like absolutely aligned and just really curious that that's where it came from, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then you can go to that soul level, and perhaps that was the reason that I chose this particular family to be incarnated in, you know, to have those influences at a young age in order to, yeah, explore those topics.
And something that I picked up on what you were just saying then was it about the decisions that are made, like whether they're conscious or they're unconscious. And that why these types of conversations are awesome is because there will be something that will make like whether the person it's the person that's listening, or when you and I are speaking, like we'll make each other think about a certain thing. And to me, it was about that point of decision, because at some point you made that decision and you didn't necessarily make it consciously with those, you know, the enmeshment. The thing that came to me when you're talking about like inherited passion is football. Like, you know what I mean? You know, the dad goes for a certain team, so the kids go for a certain team, and then that goes on down the line, and there's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying that that's like a perfect example of an inherited passion. And we like, even when I met my partner, like he was so he if his team lost, you couldn't speak to him for like the next 24 hours. And so because it was so ingrained in him of like, this is what I'm passionate about. And if like then if they lose, it's like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. And if they win, it's the best.
Mm.
And then, you know, as we go on our journey, and the same for me, I discovered that one of the reasons when I inquired into that self-inquiry, why did I join the army? Like, you know, it's not, people meet me now and they're like, what, are you in the army? I question, why was I in the military? And I had the best time in the military and I did really well because I just followed, because I was like, okay, I made a decision. But when I go into that self-inquiry, I know that part of the reason that I joined was to attempt to find a passion, because I wanted to prove to, like, it was a proving to people in my life that I can do this and I can be successful and I can be an achiever.
Mm.
And that then led to my for want of a better term, nervous breakdown, which was a breakthrough at 27 years old. I got to that point where I was so depleted because the passion wasn't enough to hold me. I wasn't passionate. I was
Mm.
just doing the things, and mm, um, I was just playing the game. And I got to that point and I was like, I can't function anymore. My body broke down, my mind broke down, and I needed to change something.
Yeah, I feel like it's a really like interesting an important piece of the discernment between what is actually the passion versus what is like the wound, what aspect of us is driving it. And just because, and this is an extra interesting point, just because there's this like energy and motion towards something, we have to like use our barometer to determine whether that is like an anxious energy of like needing to want
Yeah.
having to shooting or
Yeah.
there's
Grasping.
yeah,
Mhm.
or I guess the difference being if it was um, true passion, like soul passion. Like I feel like that's an interesting aspect to bring in because when it's soulful, like the passion is kind of pulsing through us at that soul level, it feels completely different to
Yeah.
the need or the shooting or the that kind of energy. And I guess one thing that you definitely truly were passionate about was the adventure aspect.
Yes.
That was true for you. And so
Yeah.
even if there was an aspect that was wanting to prove and kind of have these pieces, there was also a real true soul aligned passion about the adventure and all of the different experiences that you got to have. And I think that's a really important point too, is that it doesn't necessarily mean it's one or the other. It can be both. And
Totally.
I feel like when we land in a place like that, like you kind of ending up in the army, um, we could look back on it and say, oh, I did it to, all those reasons. But actually, there was also this other reason. And I think it's important that we be kind and gentle and not really perceive it as though it wasn't meant to be that way, because obviously it gave
Yeah.
you so much in the same experience and ultimately led you to where you are now.
Yeah. And I love that. And it's always coming back to that when we do the self-inquiry and the self-reflection, we get to go back to the purity of why we made the original decision. And it wasn't necessarily the original decision that was well, actually the original decision was never wrong. But it's just the journey that we took after that, where we weren't necessarily fully present in the moment, or weren't aligned with the passion, and weren't following that thread of purity. We were following the enmeshment or the wounds or whatever, and that's what took us out of alignment, which created the exhaustion.
Yeah, exactly.
And and that adventure piece has been so pivotal for me throughout my life. And once I discovered that actually that's one of the core values for me, is to have that adventure, life changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was thinking as well about that, the piece of like the exhaustion. And as like it was just almost 1 year ago that I went to Egypt, and the lead up to that was huge for me in following the adventure, following the thread of the adventure, but then also noticing my wounds and projections and all of the things in the process. And then when I was there, even when I was there and I was on my own internal pilgrimage, I discovered like parts of myself that I hadn't become aware of before, and that like created this huge depletion in a moment. But because of my own internal self-reflection, I was able to stop, and the depletion was able to be released really quickly and framed or even re-energized into enthusiasm energy, because I was able to realign it, because the actual journey itself was so pivotal to the next step of my own evolution. And I think of that compared to what I experienced in the depletion when I was 27 years old. And the two are poles apart, yet they both come back to this sense of following what I knew to be right at the time, which was, okay, I'm just going to have a sense of adventure.
Mm. Yeah. And that depletion energy, I feel like it's it gives us so much data. And as we grow, ultimately at some point in time, well, always, we don't know what we don't know. And the choices that are informed by what we don't know are what they are. And as we kind of continue our journey and become more discerning and more able to recognize and reflect on what feels true, and the awareness of each and every decision, there is so much more choice because there's so much more awareness. And having the conscious awareness of what is kind of depleting us and making a choice for something else is always available. It's just whether we have the awareness, or not just the awareness, but the courage sometimes to choose the other thing, because sometimes the thing that is depleting us is also the thing that an aspect of us would potentially say they were passionate about, but
Yes.
it's an aspect that is maybe it's a place in which we have formed our sense of belonging, or formed our sense of receiving love. What the idea that comes,
Being safe.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. The example that comes to mind is when some people are completely depleted and exhausted because of their looking after someone else, whether that be like a family member or like a friend or something like that. And the part that's driving them, they're really passionate about helping people, they're really passionate about making sure that somebody's looked after. And yet there's an aspect of them that doesn't have the capacity
Yeah.
or like isn't trusting that that person will receive what they need if they can't give it to them. And there's so many things that can be wrapped up in that. And then there's this depletion because the capacity isn't actually there, or it isn't actually in the highest soul alignment to be doing that, because there's rescuer patterns or savior patterns or hero patterns. And both parties want to unlock and come out of those, but there's an exhaustion and a depletion probably from both until that awareness becomes available.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's such a good point. And well, as a mother, I've witnessed that so many times over the years because there's definitely been parts of my journey as a mother where I would be exhausted. And, not when they're children and you're not getting much, when they're babies and you're not getting much sleep. It's actually, as they're growing and we get to well, I got to regularly check my own internal inherited passions and beliefs through my interaction with my children. And the and it was a constant letting go process of any belief in me that I must project that passion outwards. And go back to what you spoke about at the beginning of, I was very aware of, it's not up to me to make to tell my children what they should be passionate about and what they need to do with their lives. It was always, I was always very conscious about um uh, helping them to make their own decisions and find their own way. But that in itself could be exhausting at times because
Yeah.
in witnessing them make their own choices, my own patterns of control arise. And I want to shift it, or I want to change it, or and so it's constantly coming back to that moment of checking myself and going, okay, they're making their own choices here. It's moving into, and it's something that I'm really working with at the moment in the current life choices that I've made, is stepping back even more And, my daughters are grown now, and I'm so grateful for the way that I raised them and the way that I raised myself in the process, and being able to take my hands off, because where I am now in my current life situation is this constant call to observe. When you go on Vipassana, he says observe objectively, and so I'm like constantly observing objectively, surveying the whole situation, and coming from this place of innocence and recognizing that every single aspect of this reality gets to make a choice.
Yeah.
And actually, that's what I'm passionate about.
Mm,
Passionate about is allowing everyone to make their own choices, because that is a human gift that we
mm. I feel very passionate about the same thing.
have.
And the thought that came to my mind as you were sharing, because I was thinking about like, the things that we become passionate about, for example, like being a good mum, right? And our perception of what that is or what that looks like,
Yeah.
and the passionate part of us that's like, this is how I'm going to show up. And then when we hold that rigidity around that perspective or how it's meant to look, and I was just so considering the idea of how our passion, when it's laced with the rigidity of must, how that can so form our leading into the exhaustion.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you said, holding yourself in the face of these decisions and stuff can become exhausting. And I feel like the reason why is because it's almost like your default, and the thing that we've learned is to do this. And the way that I want to be is to do this. And so the exhaustion is like continually like keeping myself in check, like, oh, okay, check and check and check. And I feel like it's equally exhausting to do the other,
Yeah.
right? Because we're so passionate, and it's almost we're holding the rigidity of that passion, but it's in the absence of truth.
Yeah.
And I can think about so many things that I have had rigidity around, like over the years, like different things that I will or won't eat, for example. And my passion about healthy food, for example, would be the thing that was leading that, right? But underneath, there would be parts of me that didn't want to be judged if I ate this particular thing, because I studied nutrition, and so I should know better, and like all these kinds of things. And so there's a real refinement of
Totally.
separating what does passion actually mean? Passion doesn't mean rigidity. Passion doesn't mean locked in and I have to do all of these things. It's just about the sensation, the life force, the ideas, the beliefs. But it's not about holding those beliefs rigidly. That's not what
No.
passion is. Passion is just that energy, whereas the rigidity is a whole other subset of um, mind things.
Yeah.
It's our unconscious as well, the unconscious that's holding us kind of imprisoned to that passion has to equal da 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 da.
Yeah, it has to be done a certain way.
Yeah.
Which actually, if we hold, and this is what you're saying, is if we hold rigid to that, then the passion deflates,
Yes.
because we're in a moment, we know that we're actually supposed to do something different, but I'm not, because it has to be done this way. And so I move along this line, almost of being robotic,
Mm.
and passion dissipates. So yeah, it's such a cool conversation. And as you were talking, I was thinking about like the beauty way and the middle way, and I was thinking, gosh, it's like that it can be exhausting. It
Mm.
can, as you were saying, it can be exhausting because I'm constantly checking myself and observing objectively and going, okay, what really needs to happen here? But coming into presence. And
Yeah.
if I think about it, like I'm constantly bringing my consciousness fully into my body, which is the densest part of me, and I'm needing to sit in that density for a moment. But there's this point when we keep doing this, which is what you and I have been consciously practicing over the last 12 months at least. There's this point that comes where everything just starts to flow and it becomes so much more magical is the word that I'm going to use,
Yeah.
because yes, it's still an effort and I still have to make an effort. But every time I sit back and I come into myself, instead of feeling that um, exhausted deflation, I regenerate myself and I go back out there and I'm back on the track again.
Yeah. And, it just reminds me of like, how they say in yoga, like the practice is off the mat. The
Yeah,
practice and it reminds me of like going to the gym. If I walk into the gym and I want to lift 100 kilos, that's going to be really, really hard. But if
yeah,
I start with 10 and then move up to 20 and then move up to 30 and then so on and so forth, at some point in time, it will be easier for me to lift the 100. And the
yeah,
same is true for our consciousness. The same is true for the practice of discerning as to like where things are coming from and how to be the objective observer and all those different pieces. But it's a consistent muscle building. Like,
totally.
and
Yeah.
until that particular neural pathway is like a highway rather than like a little track
Dirt
in the
road.
grass,
Yeah.
exactly, that we have to keep treading and treading and treading and treading in
Getting the
order to,
machete
yeah,
out.
exactly. Cutting down all the freaking weeds and that is true. Like, when you think about forming that neural pathway that wasn't there on its own, it wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't formed in our childhood, or perhaps it was, but it was also overrun or overtaken by these other things. And so either way, we have to, the first kind of times is clearing the way. And
Yeah.
that's more exhausting than, catching a Ferrari down the highway.
Totally. And it's also more exhausting because what I always say, and the way I always imagine it, is when you've taken that off ramp, for instance, and you've got the machete going, you can still hear the highway.
Yeah.
And so you've still got, oh my God, it would be so much easier if I went and did that. And I'd get there faster, and all of the things are there. And so it takes so much more energy to keep doing this.
Yeah.
But there comes a point where all of a sudden it's not as hard anymore, because like you said, we've built the muscle and our arms are used to the machete and it gets that much easier. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden we move with greater freedom.
Yeah. I mean, and that's ultimately the reason that I continually do the work, because I know that at some point it gets easier. And
Yeah.
the easier is a different kind of easier than ignoring it. One
Yeah.
of it is like ignorance and the bliss of ignorance, which there is truth to, that there is bliss in ignorance, because when we're completely sheltered or unaware of it, there is a level of bliss. And the bliss that I feel in the lack of ignorance and in the kind of once the highway is built is actually true bliss. Like, it's like my soul is not very satisfied with the ignorance style of bliss.
Yeah. And some souls are, which is not wrong.
Oh, totally.
That is also an important point to do with this, I think, with the passion, is
Yes.
that when we stop trying to prove to any aspect of humanity, which is a reflection of an aspect of ourselves, that their choice is wrong, we deepen into our passion, because we get to feel it and we get to follow it and we get to be it. And we don't have to convince anyone to be the same thing. And if someone chooses to be in their ignorant bliss, observe objectively.
Yeah. And it feels like it circles back around to what I was sharing about the passion being in need of someone else to change their mind. It has such a different essence to the passion that is the purity of that, which is kind of irrespective and irrelevant to how it's received. It's
Yeah.
like how it's naturally pulsing through. It's sort of not really about the other at all.
Yeah. And it's
And
never about the other, is it?
and simultaneously, it's really inspiring and exciting to be around passionate people. But
Yes.
that's not because of their need for us to receive it. It's almost like we receive that level of inspiration and excitement off the back of it when it's in its purest form.
Yeah. And someone's passion, for instance, is not going to be inspiring to might be inspiring to this person and might not be inspiring to that person. And that's how life rolls as well. And the reason that that person is inspiring in the first place is because they're not trying to prove anything to anyone else. So so
Wow. So many different angles of passion. And I feel really excited. The kind of people that we've got lined up for our next few podcast recordings, I feel are really passionate about the things that they do and the things that they are exploring and that they teach. And yeah, I'm really excited to keep this passion thread moving
yeah.
through this season.
Yeah, me too. No, I love this intention of being passionate. It's really
Yeah.
cool. And it's been so great in this conversation because I think that everyone will feel like yours and my passion to a new degree as
Yeah,
well.
totally. Because look at how passionate we are, even just about the exploration of the topic of passion, you know? And I'm really curious of people, like what it evokes in them, like what becomes clearer around where your passion is versus your patterns.
Yeah, I would love to know. Like, I'd love people to comment and share because it is, like we said, and we've demonstrated today, like there's so many nuances in this. And to me, it comes down to really being present with myself and every single day opening to learning something new from myself and following that thread.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Exhausting and passion creating simultaneously.
And energizing.
And energizing, exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
Well,
I love it.
thank
It's really
you.
fun.
Yeah, thanks for great chat. And thank you for everyone who's listened in.
Yeah. Thanks for listening. And yeah, share your comments with us. We would love
Yeah.
to know.
Yeah. And as you can tell, we're both very passionate about having great conversations. And we love people when they share with us because it just extends the conversation. And so we'd love to hear if anybody has comments and reflections. So thanks for
We
being
would.
here.
Thanks. See you next time.
Bye.